Professor Tony Attwood, PhD, has had a remarkable career spanning 5 decades. Professor Tony Attwood is one of the world's foremost specialists on autism, holding an honors degree in psychology from the University of Hull, a master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of Surrey, and a PhD from the University of London. His credentials are a testament to his expertise. Currently serving as an adjunct professor at Griffith University in Queensland, Tony's impact has enriched the global understanding of autism. Alongside Dr. Michelle Garnett, Tony co-founded Attwood and Garnett Events in 2019, driven by the shared goal of enhancing autism awareness and understanding. Their shared vision seeks to reshape the narrative surrounding autism to create a world where autism is embraced and the diverse strengths, talents, and perspectives of autistic individuals are celebrated. This transformative narrative fosters a more inclusive and accepting society benefiting all its members. Renowned for his extensive contributions to understanding Asperger's syndrome, now commonly referred to as autism, Tony has authored numerous publications on the subject. His seminal book, Asperger's Syndrome, A Guide for Parents and Professionals, debuted in 1998. It resonated globally and has since found its voice in over 25 languages, making his insights accessible across cultures and continents. With a dedicated commitment to practical application, he has run a private practice for 30 years, only recently closing his books due to a long waiting list. Beyond his clinical work, he dedicates significant time to travel, sharing insights and knowledge through workshops and seminars across national and international platforms. Dr. Michelle Garnett, PhD, is a clinical psychologist with more than 30 years specializing in autism. In 2005, she founded Minds and Hearts, a clinic specialized in autism, where she served as clinical and managing director for 14 years until 2019. In 2019, alongside Tony Attwood, she co-founded Attwood and Garnett Events, aiming to enhance autism awareness and understanding with a vision to foster a neuro-affirming community. In addition to her extensive private practice, Michelle has significantly contributed to autism research, authored influential books, and engaged in impactful speaking engagements. Her peer-reviewed research has informed our understanding of early autism identification, the female autism profile, and the link between mental health and positive outcomes in autistic individuals. She has co-authored 6 respected books on autism, including the influential Spectrum Women, Walking to the Beat of Autism, with Barb Cook. It is a seminal work on the female autism experience. Her recent books, Having Fun with Feelings on the Autism Spectrum and 10 Steps to Reducing Your Child's Anxiety on the Autism Spectrum, offer invaluable guidance to parents of young autistic children. Michelle is a sought-after presence in academic circles, presenting as a keynote speaker at conferences and conducting workshops, seminars, and training sessions on autism across Australia, the UK, and Europe. Her influence extends to universities, autism organizations, government, and non-governmental bodies, solidifying her reputation as a prominent figure in the autism field. Michelle is autistic and has ADHD, late diagnosed.
Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation. I'm Michelle Garnett with Tony Attwood here, and we want to, as well as say thank you for attending this, thank you to Mona for inviting us to this, to be a part of this amazing conference on neurodiversity and love. These are topics very close to our heart.
They are.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're delighted to bring some of the pearls of wisdom we've been privileged to collect over a combined journey of over 80 years in autism. And autism brings a lot of diversity in terms of other things that can come along with autism. So we'll get into that. But to start, I'm just going to share my screen and make sure that you can see the slides that we want to present to you today. Good. I think we're there. So
I
let's
think
dive in.
We're ready. Okay.
Okay. And next slide, please. Neurodiversity. As I just said, there's a lot in neurodiversity. We specialize in autism, but that means that we have seen a lot of ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, mental health issues, Tourette syndrome, and even acquired neurodiversity. So as they say, there's a lot of diversity in neurodiversity. It's not just one thing. But one of the things we've learned over the time that we've been in this area is that there isn't a right way or a wrong way. They're just different. And I love this little meme, if you
I don't know where you got that from.
I just got it from the internet.
Yeah.
I put in not right, not wrong, different. And this came up. As one person says, it's a 6. The other says, no, it's a 9. Just because you are right does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. And that kind of describes.
That's crucial. I like that phrase. It is seeing life through your partner's eyes as well as through your own,
and not judging one to be superior or the monopoly of the truth. It's their truth in that moment at that time. So neurodivergent people tend to have a difficulty in life. And I'm talking about myself here as a neurodivergent person. I was late diagnosed autistic and ADHD. So I'm speaking from my own experience as well as our clinical experience. Neurodivergent people in our community are in the minority. So if we say there's 10% who are ADHD, 3% who are autistic, but then we've got a whole lot of other people too who are neurodivergent in different ways, we're probably looking at about 20 to 25% of people who would actually qualify for a formal diagnosis in our community. A lot of these differences are hidden, and they're not right, they're not wrong, they're just different. So our definition of neurodivergence is a person who has a different way of perceiving, learning, thinking, and sensing the world. And that gives them their own unique perspective. We all have neurodivergent traits, and all the traits are human. We all have neurodivergent traits in a different complex or a cluster, but none of them is outside the human experience. We just may, on that continuum, have more of or less than other people. And the different constellations make a difference in the expression of that neurodivergence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's the pattern rather than an exclusive or unique characteristic.
It is. That makes all the difference. Now we're going to take it in turns. So, Tony.
Okay. In many ways in a relationship, it's an attitude change. The chances are the non-neurodiverse partner has a particular view of what their partner should be like, what they should do, etc. The convention is there. But then you realize that this person, it may take a while to recognize this, is not as you anticipated in a variety of ways. And that can lead to all sorts of issues between you. Now, the thing is, we're looking at what we call the 4 C's in an attitude change. The first is curiosity. Right? It's rather of, why do you do that? And there must be a reason. Sometimes the neurodiverse person finds it very difficult to explain why they do particular things. But I do ask the non-neurodiverse partner to take on the role in a way of a psychologist of trying to find out, why do you do that? There must be a reason. Now I know why you do that. It means it's much more able to be accommodated in our relationship. Compassion. Because many neurodiverse individuals have faced considerable adversity as a minority. There can be issues that range from trauma, more on that in a moment, etc. But it's also commitment to the relationship. And one of the things that we both found is that when you have neurodiverse relationships, the non-neurodiverse person has a huge commitment to the relationship, but also the neurodivergent person, but they may not express it in the conventional way. And what we're looking for is a degree of connections. There are many connections, intellectual, emotional, practical, and so on. And it's finding and maintaining and enhancing those connections as much as we can. Now, step 1 is to learn about neurodiversity and being human. In other words, both parties need to learn about each other. It's not exclusive for one partner to do this. Now, there's literature. Jessica Kingsley publishers have a number of books. It's the, should we say, the publisher to go to, especially books by Maxine Aston. Her book, The Autism Couples Workbook, is very good she's a relationship counselor for those who may be one partner reluctant to take their concerns to a relationship counselor. And if that's going to inhibit working successfully with the relationship, it is a workbook that you can go through. Now, there are also podcasts, Neurodiverse Love Podcast. They can help you finding information. The more information you have, the more understanding, the more constructive you can be. But there's also support groups. These are invaluable. When you read a book, yes, you can get information, but you can't ask questions of a book, but you can in a support group. Now, that includes ADHD and marriage, and that's an area that needs to be explored further in many ways. And this is now going to be something we are going to promote, actually, is our own webinar, Autism in Couple Relationships.
It's worth promoting.
It is, because we really combine, it's a 5-hour one, is it?
Yes, it's a full day, which crosses about 5 hours of talk, and there's Q&A with that as well, and other resources. Essentially, it's working through a program that we co-developed, and we ran groups for many years at a clinic I used to run in Brisbane here in Australia called Minds and Hearts, and it was really about helping neurodivergent couples increase their understanding of each other, because what we found with those 4 C's, that with that curiosity, compassion, we can start to really develop an understanding of where this person's coming from, what their values are, and that shifts, that provides lovely shifts in the relationship of, oh, now I get it. You're not trying to be difficult or try to punish me or whatever the rhetoric, the narrative is in your head. There's a reason for this that makes sense in the relationship, and that changes the views of the person in the relationship. So this is where we're coming from to do the course. As Tony said, it's 5 hours. We work through a program together. Great for couples to do, also great for relationship counselors.
And you can do it privately, and you can watch a bit and then pause and then spend some time discussing the implications of that, how it's insightful, what we can do, and then carrying on.
Yeah, there's lots of activities.
Yeah, so this is very much step one. Both of you need to learn each other's perspective. It's a dual problem of mutual understanding. Now,
absolutely.
Michelle.
Thank you. And one of the key components that we have found that, bear with me, please, because this can sound very out of reach at certain times in the relationship, and that is to celebrate strengths. Celebrating strengths in the relationship means that we're starting to recognize the good in the other person and the good in the relationship. And what happens is that we actually also start to see the good in ourselves. So you build on success, which I love.
Yes, you see the good in the other and yourself.
And yourself.
Yeah.
It's the gift that keeps giving. And why this feels so elusive as couples come to see professionals or in marital distress is that there has been often a lot of bad memories building up for a long time. Some interactions that have been hurtful on both sides, and often trust is eroded, for example. And so looking at strengths feels like heresy to the current situation.
Like there aren't. I'm looking for errors to be corrected.
And you will see them. There will be a lot of errors, and that will just feel very, angry making, disappointing, reason for despair. So clearly something needs to give, something needs to change. We can't stay in that space. So the first step, as we look at neurodiversity and being human, and just being curious about who is this person and how are they, and we'll talk about how to do this shortly. One of the things you'll be looking for is the qualities in your partner. I'm talking to you as if you're a partner, you may be a therapist, but there will be qualities in any couple. The reason they married will be because they saw something in that person that resonated, that they fell in love with, or they felt, yes, that's someone I want to spend time with. And we're revisiting that, and we're enhancing and seeing, where is that quality playing out in this person's life now? And if it isn't, why isn't it? Where has that gone? They haven't changed. They're still the same person that you chose, but maybe life got in the way. We need to explore that. And then abilities. Often we are very entranced when we're in love with someone, with their abilities. It might be in their workspace, it might be their social abilities, but we're looking at whatever these may be, and aspects of their personality. We're also then interested in, as couples ourselves or relationship therapists, how do these strengths really complement each other? There would be a reason that you're together, and it's because usually there's a benefit for both of you with these strengths in the relationship. You enhance each other in some way, and this is what we're focusing on. We then also work on reflection for what is going well. Often what's missing when we're suffering is we forget to notice when things actually worked. And sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes we just expect it to work all the time. And so when it happens, it's like, oh, at last, it should be like this all the time. Instead of, wow, we had a nice laugh together then. There was a sense of connection.
Yeah.
And let's dwell on that. Wow, that was really positive. We must share a sense of humor. What sort of sense of humor do we have? How can we bring this in more often?
Yeah, and when we say perception, it's often perceiving the negatives, but not perceiving the positive.
Exactly.
We need a balance.
We need a balance. Yeah, we're not saying be Pollyanna. And certainly there's relationships where we're talking about would not be useful or helpful or even safe because there's abuse in that relationship, because it's become so toxic that there's a lack of safety in that relationship. And certainly, sadly, we see that, and that needs to also be recognized. That is a difficult thing to recognize for the partners, but certainly that's something, if you're in a relationship where you feel abuse is going on, that's something to talk about with somebody else.
Yeah,
that's
very much so.
a reason to seek help, even if it's one-on-one, not couples therapy. But if we just expand on the strengths, if we come back to it's essentially a safe relationship, but we're not communicating very well, there's a lot of tensions, then what sort of strengths are we seeing? And you might look at this and go, okay, I see all these strengths here, but why is that baby there? I'm not a baby.
Yes,
but,
yes. When I saw this slide, I thought, Michelle,
why
did you
there?
put a baby there? And she gave a very profound answer.
Well, what came to me is that, like, you see this beautiful baby and you look at him and he's saying, you know what, I'm awesome. And you just agree, don't you? And I think it's helpful sometimes to remember that we all come into the world this way. These beautiful little beings, these gorgeous babies, and we're lovable, adorable, and our essence is so good and encourages others to want to be with us and be around us. And then life happens, you know, and things get in the way. But the essence of who we are, that beauty of who we are, that capacity for love, for generosity, for giving, for being joyful is always present. It's always the essence of who we are. But we get a lot of adversity. There's trauma. There's tensions in relationship. So what we're looking for is the essence of the human, you know, that you're born with as a baby. And these, I haven't labeled these as neurodivergent traits or neurotypical traits, but you may resonate with some of these, you may not, but the sorts of traits we're talking about that you're looking for, and this self-awareness is so helpful. Are you someone who can really hyper-focus, that you can just get lost in something, and if you're given 6 hours, you will just do amazing things. You'll be so productive, so efficient, and you will know a lot about that topic when you finish. Are you really good at connecting with others? But it's got to be one-on-one, and it's got to be the right person. Or it can be a group, but it's small, and we're very similar, we're like-minded. What sort of connection? It's still capacity to connect. Are you someone with passionate interests? It's also been called in the literature monotropism. Can you dive deeply? And that interest may be lifelong or may go on for years and years, and you become an expert in your interest. Stimming, yes, it is a strength because it's a way to self-regulate. So that's stimming, whether it's pacing or moving certain parts of your body, stimming,
or twiddling pencils and
flicking your feet, all of these things that we do. It's a way of self-regulating. It's not trying to annoy others. It's actually being able to just cope with whatever is going on in that moment. Big emotions come up and we need to cope. Sensory strengths, so the ability to listen to music and have an experience that's transcendent, or be able to see art and be so transfixed by the colors and the light and shade and the form that it takes you away into a meditation for a long time. Compassionate heart. I won't go through each of these in detail, but you can see that there's so many ways that these particular traits that we can have can play out in positive ways in our lives. But you know what? The ones that I put on this slide are very much associated neuro traits with ADHD and with autism, and with certain patterns of thinking in being, for example, schizotypal personality disorder or schizophrenia. These traits are not necessarily valued or considered positive traits. They're usually put in the line of, this is something that is wrong with you, or it's the medical model of a deficit that we need to fix. Not all of them, but some of them. Then we have these. If you take a look at these, many people have the ability to stay calm across many situations. What an awesome capacity. They're very well organized. They connect with many different types of people and can do groups really well without getting overwhelmed. They can read most people intuitively and with accuracy. They can multitask. They're compassionate. They can see the big picture. They don't get lost in the detail. So you can see so many different ways of being human, all awesome ways of being human.
Now, step 2 is observe the dynamic or the pattern of communication. This is asking you to step back from your emotional issues and look back as objectively, not as subjectively as you can. Look for a pattern. What's going on here? This is what a relationship counsellor will do, but this is something you may start yourself in a way. So it's looking for those patterns. Yeah.
It's frozen. Let me see if I can get it.
That's it. Now, these are some common communication challenges because communication is a particular issue. One is interoception. That is the ability to pick up signals within your body. And that can be very difficult, especially for an autistic person and many other non-autistic people too, is that they're trying to pick up heart rate, breathing, muscle tension, etc. That can be warning signals of increasing agitation. So there may be almost a mind-body division, and that's where we find yoga meditation can help get that connection back to success again. But alexithymia is to explain your feelings in words. And it may well be that the non-autistic partner says, how do you feel about this? I don't know. Come on, you must know. I don't know. And it can be a considerable difficulty finding the precise word to explain a particular thought or feeling, which can cause communication breakdown because the other person is trying to think out what's going on in your mind and so on. So trauma and mental health issues can occur. Many neurodiverse individuals have suffered trauma from rejection from others, bullying and teasing, all sorts of things, and all forms of abuse. So one of the issues of trauma can be trust, and that can be an issue in the relationship, but also mental health issues, anxiety disorder, depression, and so on. Emotion regulation seems to be an issue too, of being very quick to react and being criticized for reacting too much. However, the person finds it very difficult to pick up the signals early on and, should we say, regulate. It's a problem of regulating. That's why we say emotion regulation problems. An intolerance of difference, and this is where what the whole theme of this, in a way, is to celebrate and accommodate being different, not to make a value judgment, it's inferior or defective.
On that, can I just add that if you notice yourself in this, I certainly have, obviously I'm in a neurodivergent relationship, it's please don't judge yourself. It's internalized. We are enculturated to have assumed similarity, to feel in a tribe we need to have similar qualities and values, and it's not in other words, difference, whether it's because of disability or because of race or because of anything that makes us different, our sexuality, our gender identity. We're not in a culture that celebrates difference. We're in a culture that tries to stamp it out largely. And if we don't try and stamp it out, sometimes we're called woke. You know, we're too compassionate.
In a derogatory way.
A very derogatory flavor can come in. So when you notice this in yourself and you feel yourself judging and thinking they shouldn't be like that, they should be different, we are enculturated for that, sadly. We're not enculturated into an inclusive society.
Yeah.
And our relationships are kind of a microcosm of the larger society.
Yeah. In a way, what's happening in modern society is the tolerance of difference is getting narrower and narrower and more psychiatrically defined to be corrected, or medication to be given. In years gone by, there was a huge acceptance. Well, that's just the way they are. And we've lost that ability of just acceptance. That's who they are. There's also issues of intolerance of uncertainty. That can be a characteristic of wanting things to be predictable, and that may cause issues with the other partner too. And it may be almost like a personality. I like things to be rigid and shall we say, controlled, where others are much more spontaneous and flexible. It's accommodating and compromising as much as you can. Slower processing time. If you expect an immediate response, there can be all sorts of issues. The immediate reaction is no. But if you say, have a think about that, come back in a moment and let me know your thoughts, you may get a more wise response than an instantaneous response.
Or a day, or a week. Some people need a lot of time to process.
Yeah.
I do.
And go offline and eventually come up to a wise decision. But it's going to take time. It's also coping with change for all parties concerned. But there's going to be major changes with the arrival of children, changing jobs, all those sorts of things. But also different priorities can be a concern. And it's a question of what priorities are you going to have. Now, also, we're going to look at the possibility of meltdowns. Often in neurodiverse individuals, there's a buildup of stress. Life's tough for a neurodiverse person. You're in a minority. There are many challenges. People may not understand your perspective and way of thinking and so on. And eventually it becomes too much and you have a meltdown, which can be quite a scary experience for all concerned. So as a couple, it's working out what are the signs of meltdown on the way, what are the things that can be done to prevent it when they do occur, the do's and don'ts, and how to react subsequently. Now that can be a meltdown, which can be, shall we say, an explosion of energy, but there can be an implosion, a shutdown, which is almost like a depression approach, and not being able to talk, not being able to engage. The person has almost gone into hibernate mode to try and reconfigure of what to do in that situation. Now, also there can be issues of communication in, are you listening? Often the neurodiverse person is listening, but they don't appear to be listening. They're not making the, yeah, you've got a point there, but if they're taking it all in, it's also assertiveness for both parties, self-advocacy and the ability to explain yourself. Neurodiverse individuals can find that difficult. And for both partners, how do you manage stress? Recognizing stress in your partner and yourself, what works for each partner. Also executive functioning problems. Being distracted, tangential, and being impulsive. So those can be issues, obviously, in the relationship as an ADHD type feature, but also ableism. This is a new term that's starting to become, shall we say, a greater degree of currency. And this is that you must always be conventional on what people expect, not who you really are, which also comes into camouflaging. So there's ableism of the non-neurodiverse person saying, you must be like all us, you must be part of our club. But also it's internalized ableism. It's thinking that way too, but also camouflaging. And what may have occurred is camouflaging may have occurred in the early stages of the relationship, but then the mask falls and that can lead to all sorts of issues. So camouflaging,
who are
you can understand it occurring and it's done for a reason, but it's not good in a relationship. You're really wanting to find the authentic self.
Before you move on, I just wanted to add throughout, thank you, Tony, fantastic to describe just some of the common communication challenges we've noticed in our neurodivergent couples. But, excuse me, you'll notice I've put the infinity sign. And the reason I put that is that it's when you start to observe the patterns, when you look at the dynamics, as Tony started this section to talk about, when you start to notice these coming up, you think, oh, I'm camouflaging in this situation, or my partner's camouflaging, or this topic always leads to a meltdown. Start to think about, what is the script? Because typically in couples, we have a script that the couples go into, and then there's trigger points of emotion, and then it kind of dives into a very yucky place of tension, maybe more criticism and dislike,
agitation,
saying things you regret later,
rude words to each other,
maybe. And then what happens, the reason this is an infinity is then it's a dynamic. So one couple will say one thing, the other says another, and then they'll say that again, and then you'll say something, and you get locked into this pattern. So the reason that we do this sign is because it's really showing that you're locked. And when you start to recognize those patterns, you realize it's not necessarily the topic, it's not just that setting, it's a dynamic that's happening between us. I don't say these things to anybody else, it's with you. Why is that? That's when you're getting to the heart of the communication problem. So when the first step is recognition that something's happening, and it could be because of neurotraits, or it could be because of trauma, there's lots of reasons, but when you recognize the pattern, it gives you the power to actually step outside the pattern and decide to do something different. And we don't know what that different thing is yet, but we've got some tips.
Yeah, good.
So, Yep. So one of the things we found that can be hugely helpful is to schedule a limited time, so you don't overload your partner either way, whether it's for a neurodivergent partner or neurotypical. Like 15 to 20 minutes is a good idea for discussion about hot topics, what we call hot topics. And the hot topics are the ones that usually you find there's a bit of heat, they're just not resolved, that pattern keeps happening. And the idea is, in private, no interruption, one partner's the listener, active listening skills. So we're zipping it. You can say nothing.
Easier said than done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the script is strong. You want to say what you need to say. You're not allowed. Your time will come. So you take it in turns, 10 minutes each, and then stop. As the speaker, you be as honest as you can, but respectful. We're not trying to rip each other to shreds. We want to look after the partner. We're trying to come from love and empathy, from curiosity, trying to help your partner understand what's going on for you. It might be hard for them. How do we do that? We'll come to that. The listener, listen without judgment. That's hard, but we're stepping away. We're just trying to understand. We're not trying to judge. We're just trying to get their perspective. And then you step away. You're not trying to agree. No one's right or wrong. They're just different. And then you go away. You are allowed to ask for more information, and you can also observe your own reactions. That's helpful. When I said communication, as Tony said, sometimes the person can't easily say what's going on. We often find alexithymia comes with neurodivergence, including mental health issues. So it is helpful to be able to lock on to what you're feeling. We recommend having alternatives to the look at me and tell me what's going on method.
Yes.
So use things like typing. In our groups, a lot of people would learn more about each other through an email than face-to-face discussion.
And Discord.
And Discord, the
yes,
app. There's lots of different streams. It's very organized. It can really help some neurodivergent minds because they like the ADHD, OCD, and autism in particular, but just really clear lines of communication, literally lines of communication. Music, I can't say what I'm feeling, but this piece of music says it, and then suddenly there's a connection.
It is, and that's a beautiful moment that you suddenly realize, because there's the feeling in the music itself, but also the lyrics too.
Yes.
And we've known some autistic individuals who've been able to write their own music or change the lyrics to a well-known song that expresses their own way of feeling. So it's anything else but look at me and speak.
Yes, which is the neurotypical way, but it doesn't always work in neurodivergent relationships. And sorry, scenes from a movie as powerful as music, text from a book, poetry. So leaning on other modalities. And the reason I love this tool for communication, because what we find is that whilst the person can't necessarily reflect on their emotion and tell you what they're feeling, they can recognize it. So when you put the wheel of emotion in front of them, and you can get lovely cushions with this on there, it can be part of the decor. It doesn't have to just be a laminated
or on the fridge,
piece of paper, or on the fridge. And you just go, you look in the middle and you go, well, I'm feeling bad. And then, okay, in terms of bad, are you feeling hurt, hostile, angry, whatever else? And you can see, and then they can go, well, actually, I'm actually feeling really inadequate and miserable. So it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe you're feeling sad. So you start to get, and usually there's layers of emotion.
Yeah, and the thing is, the person points to miserable and sad, but that may not be what's expressed in their face and body language. And this comes as a total surprise, a revelation. You're feeling sad, but you don't appear sad.
No. And they can't tell you they're sad. And of course, sadness, when we tune into someone's sadness, we have a hugely different reaction than if we tune into their frustration, irritation, and anger.
That's actually quite profound.
It is in relationship, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. It totally changes your approach.
Totally changes your approach. And that person, in other words, we give a softer approach. And when we touch the softer emotions like sadness, they can often be resolved more quickly. And we can get locked into rehearsing our anger, but we're not touching the hurt underneath. It really needs to be expressed and heard by the partner. So you can see these ways of communicating can really open windows of understanding within the relationship. We also notice that it's really important in neurodiverse relationships to adjust expectations, to be prepared to do that, because the needs, we can't go on assumed similarity. We can't just go, well, I'm like this, therefore aren't you? No, probably not. Like there may be different needs for solitude, different needs for affection, how much, what type, different intimacy needs. And there can be sensory stuff going on that if you're not neurodivergent in a sensory way, it's very difficult to understand. But when we talk about sensory sensitivity for a neurodivergent person, it's not just, it's not just a preference, it's overwhelming. I am overwhelmed by the noise, the touch. I can't even touch my own skin, let alone you touch me. And that can feel very rejecting. But if that's a tactile defensiveness, that's about a differently functioning sensory system, we've really got to accommodate that. That's not just going to be fixed by habituation, by just doing it. In fact, we know from the research as well that sensory difference in neurodivergence is not that we don't have a way of fixing it. It's a workaround. We make accommodations, we get better at having more resilience, but it doesn't actually get fixed. So the partner needs to really know that.
Yeah, it is. Just get used to it. I'm afraid it doesn't work. No. So it's recognizing it. It's real. It's very real. It's excruciating in many ways. So it's recognizing and honoring that person's difficulty in sensory perception.
Yes, and it will impact the relationship with kids are too loud, too much going on, parties, socializing. There's many ways that will play out. And so think about what's realistic and taking lived experience very seriously, listening to that person. That's why the active listening activity we described before is so very important. And you don't need to do that every day. Initially, it might be feasible to only do it once a week. That's fine. Just start. It's a really good start. What is realistic is also important. And this is where ableism can come in, that if it's realistic for us, we can assume it's realistic for our partner, but actually because they're wired differently, that expectation of, for example, being able to get up on time, make the breakfast for everyone, make the school lunches, or whatever the things are, maybe these are outside the reach of that person at the moment, and they need more scaffolding, prompting, that there needs to be workarounds, because the executive functioning might not be there for everything you as the partner who's really wanting a change here are expecting from the partner. And of course, the art of acceptance and compromise and forgiveness. Learning these arts, just cannot emphasize enough how important they are in relationship. So in summary, it's not about fixing the partner. They're neurodivergent. They'll have to learn how to be in this relationship in a different way. It's about accepting who they are, accommodating where there's challenges, celebrating the neuro traits that are a strength, and being patient with them and with yourself. And for the neurotypical people to be patient with their own emotions of frustration as well. It's not easy, but that art is so crucial for navigating the challenge of the neurodiverse relationship.
Yeah, and it's being positive, not negative.
Yes, it's celebrating and focus. It's like we're talking about, there's the illustration for it, embracing neurodiversity and thriving. And it is being tolerant of difference.
Okay. Now, what we've gone through is what you may be able to work out together, but they may reach a point where you think we need relationship counselors here, because there are various challenges and difficulties, we need an objective perception of the situation. Now, on that topic, relationship counselling, with Maxine Aston, the two of us recently did a survey of around about 400 neurodiverse couples from all over the world. And what Maxine and I were concerned about was the number of couples that we saw who had said that we have seen relationship counsellors before and it hasn't worked, or it's actually made the relationship worse. So we know that, we recognise that occurring, but we don't know how often and what can we do to help. Now, we did a survey and 44% of neurodiverse couples reported relationship counselling did not have a positive effect.
It's a high number.
And the view was, no, I'm not going back there because it doesn't work. But that may have been the one relationship counsellor, but it can be, no, I'm not going to do that again.
Not again. Yeah.
Okay. Now, 1 in 3 said, yes, it did help. But interesting, when we dug deeper within that, those who said it did help had a counsellor that knew about autism. And they'd either had personal experience in their family or experience in terms of training. So if that relationship counsellor is knowledgeable in autism, it can be very effective. If they're not, it can actually be quite damaging. Now, what we talked about, Maxine and I, was the importance of the relationship counsellor, their experience and training. And we thought they need to know. So we wrote a book and that's it. It's relationship counselling with autistic neurodiverse couples, a guide for professionals. Now, although it was originally written for professionals, couples will find it fascinating too, because we go through how can you identify that one of the couples that you're seeing, or both, are neurodiverse, but also how do you adjust counselling to be neurodiverse friendly? What are the issues? What can we do? So the book is going to be published by Jessica Kingsley Publishers, and we found out this week. Yes, it'll be out in June of this year. So that may be on the www.jkp.com website soon. Do recommend it, not only for relationship counsellors for the information of what they need to know to help such couples, but for the couples themselves to know what the issues are. And I strongly suspect both of them, because we're very neutral in this process of various different perspectives, and say, you need to read this.
I love it. It's a fantastic book. So June,
yes, you've had a chance
I have had a chance to preview it and can highly recommend it to you, as Tony said, to professionals, but also to couples themselves. That is all we have time for. In fact, I believe that we have gone over time, but we really hope that that has been super helpful to you to be able to talk to you about these incredibly meaningful, important topics. And we wish you all the best in your journey in this amazing world of neurodiversity.
Yeah, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, enjoy.